How's it going? My name is Pastor Chris. This is Pastor Daniel, and I'm low-key excited that I get to be doing this with my homie. And so prayers that you'll be blessed by this podcast as we discuss character and competencies. There's a stat that shows a study of 1,000 pastors, and they were asking them what's the most important thing for their churches struggling, I'm assuming. And they said developing leaders.
Okay.
And then 1 out of the 4 churches, I'm assuming represented by these pastors, were then asked, do you have a plan for developing leaders? And the answer was no. And so there we get this gap of here's the need,
Right.
We need leaders, and then yet we're not really putting anything together to build them. Or what we do have, as we'll talk about today, is largely more on discipleship, more character rather than the competency. So,
Well, I read that, and it's from a larger study on leadership in the church. And so I think the part that was so interesting to me about that is that they didn't give all the results of the study, but leaders was one of those top 2 or 3 responses, right? So you got 1,000 churches, and consistently what you're getting back from pastors in churches. So like, I would think of it this way: like, what are the things that are systematically holding back churches in America?
Right,
from making a difference? Because we look at the culture and we go, man, how do we make a difference?
Right.
And so what are they telling us? They're telling us that it's leaders.
Right.
So you take that to the next step. I mean, here's the problem, right? You take that to the next step and you go, how many of you have a plan for developing leaders? And the response was 1 in 4 have an actual plan.
Right.
And then if you really dive down into how many were actually doing the plan, it got even worse, right? It was a bad number. I mean, it was one of those pathetic numbers that you,
which highlighted the need for something like leadership development.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me then, why are leaders so important?
It's a great question, right? Because you hear that from pastors, but then the thing I hear a lot of times from people, especially in churches, is, well, I'm not really a leader.
Right.
You've heard that, right? I'm not really, it's not my thing. Look, first and foremost, leadership in churches is biblical.
Yep.
So let's just start there. You can't read the Bible and not see the focus on leadership. You can't read the New Testament.
Right.
And almost look at like how Jesus gives the commission to the first apostles, and they kind of they don't really develop the leadership core. There's a little bit of it, and almost like, well, let me go get Paul.
Right.
Fine, y'all can't handle this.
Right.
I'm gonna go get me a guy who can build leaders. And so you look at Paul's system. If you start baking away at it, that guy had a system of developing leaders, of how to mentor and disciple them and train them and put them in the right position, test them. I mean.
Yeah, which actually goes to something I know we're going to talk about later on, but it was because he was discipled. He was developed in the same manner.
Absolutely.
So he's doing what was done to him, and the cycle continues.
So why is it important? First of all, because it's biblical. Secondly, because of the nature of what we're doing in a church. I read one of the best quotes that just is stuck with me is, our job is to build armies, not audiences.
Yeah, and I like that because I'm a Marine, so.
Armies, not audiences. And what does that mean? Look, you can have a dynamic leader or a dynamic person who speaks well, maybe he's very showy, maybe he's biblically oriented and has a big crowd that will listen.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're getting anything done. Our job in the Great Commission is to spread the gospel, to disciple people, and to do that, you've got to be an army.
Yep.
You've got to not only have generals, you've got to have colonels and captains, lieutenants, majors. I mean, you've got to have an army. You've got to have leadership. If in scale, you're going to go do and propel the kingdom forward here on earth. And so, why are leaders important? Because you ain't getting anything done.
Without them. Which maybe, as you were talking, it made me think of the story in the Old Testament with Moses. He got 1 million people, right? And he's going up the wall, and then his father-in-law Jethro sees him. He's like, dude, what are you doing? It's going to kill you. You can't lead all of these people. So you need to raise up leaders of 10s and 50s and 100s and 1000s, and you lead them and let them lead them and then let them lead the people. And it sounds like that's pretty much what you're talking about, right?
It absolutely is. And we're going to talk about this in just a second. We're going to look at some character competency stuff and talk about how you can have one and not the other. And this is a great example of that. We don't have we have a lot of examples, especially in the Old Testament, of poor leadership.
True that.
And so we do need to talk about that. But it's important because it's biblical. It's important because we are building armies, not audiences. And it's important because our job is to send and plant.
Right.
And so I should have no assumption that I'm going to send someone to plant a church or reach an unreached people group if I haven't built them into a leader.
Right.
Not
Right.
just a good Christian,
Right.
not just someone who loves Jesus. Those things are important,
Right.
but a leader.
Right. Someone who can do the same thing where they are, where we're sending them to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's important. It's critical.
Yeah. Okay. So then, next question:
Yep.
Are leaders born or trained?
Yes. Yes. There are some innate skills
Right.
that are absolutely fundamental for leadership, and some people are just born with charisma.
Yep.
Some people are born with an ability to just communicate very clearly and effectively. So
Yeah.
yes, there are some skills in leaders that can be high naturally, and then most of the competency side, which we'll talk about in a second, of a leader can be trained. You can
Right.
increase your leadership skill. John Maxwell would say that every leader has a lid, and that lid can be raised through training and experience and work and effort.
yeah.
So it's both.
Okay.
Certainly, though, you should know this: it has to be developed.
Right. Regardless.
Regardless, it
Yeah.
has to be developed. It has to
Yeah.
be practiced.
Yeah.
I would say this: when we think about leadership, we often think about it in different terms. It can become vague or generalistic, and we don't know how to define it. But I think it's very important in leadership, particularly I think in church leadership, that we have this dividing line where we I guess admit that one side of leadership, think of a coin.
Right.
One side of that coin is character. There are character traits
Right.
you have to be a good leader.
Right.
Integrity.
Right.
There are not a lot of really great leaders that do not have integrity.
Right.
So there's some character traits. The other side of that coin is competencies. And it's really, I think, important to understand that leadership is both. You can't have one and not the other.
Right.
And you could be really good at one and not the other.
Right. Which we see that in the Bible as well as in real life. Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
And so when we think about whether or not their leaders are born or they're trained, what really we're talking about is they could be born with a natural set of competencies
Right.
that's very high on its own.
Right.
However, the character might not be there.
Right.
And if the character's not there, they're not going to lead very
Yeah,
far. So
yeah.
when I look at leadership, fundamentally, when we talk about developing leaders, training leaders, what is our strategy? What is my strategy for developing leadership in any organization, ministry or otherwise? I'm looking at two sides of a coin.
Right.
Do they have the character of a leader?
And
Do
then
they
what
have
is
the competencies of a leader?
and then again, because the character is the innate thing. It's that which I think you're going to talk about a little later too, which happens by way of transformation.
Yes.
And the competencies might be a little lower, but if you see the potential with the character, you can say, we can coach up the
Yeah,
competencies.
but we should dive in, right? The
Yeah.
difference between character and competency, and kind of we treat them differently, we train them differently, we develop them differently
Right.
because they are different, and yet they're both important.
Right. To the whole person.
The
Yeah.
whole person, right?
Yeah.
So when we think of a competency, I want you to think of a skill.
Okay.
I want you to think of something that you're good at, but that takes work to be good at. It is a skill.
Okay.
It is not an innate condition or a characteristic of you. It is something that you probably have honed over time. And so
Okay.
communication is a great one to use as an example of a leadership competency.
Right.
An ability to communicate, an inside communication might be another skill, like at another level of communicating to large groups or communicating through conflict. I mean, they're kind of subcategories
Right,
of this, but they're
right.
very important. Casting vision
Right.
is a form of communication, and so there's sort of levels to that skill, but by and large, it's a competency. And here's what you need to know about competencies or skills when it comes to leadership in ministry. When we've really looked at developing leaders in ministry, it doesn't actually matter what church you're at. It doesn't matter which ministry you're in. About 70 or so percent of the skills that are necessary to be a good leader are completely transferable from church to church, ministry to ministry.
Right.
So the things that you need to learn how to do really well as a leader in kids ministry
Right.
is about 70% of what you need to know is perfectly transferable to
Another ministry.
creative arts ministry.
Oh, yeah. That's
and you
good.
think, well, those aren't the same. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The fundamental skills of a leader are the fundamental skills of a leader.
Yeah,
And you
that's
have to
good.
learn those things.
Yeah.
Therefore, what that means is when we develop skills, we can take what we think is the 70% that maybe is not unique to our church or any other church,
Right.
and we can go, look, if we can learn how to teach these
Right.
at all levels,
Then no matter where you go in this church, or if God calls you somewhere else, you will be a productive member as well as a leader that can reproduce more leaders.
At least in the competency side.
Right.
We
Well,
haven't got
right.
to the character side yet.
Yeah.
But at least at the competency side, yeah, we're teaching skills that are transferable.
Yeah.
So they become not only effective for moving, doing kingdom work in kids ministry.
Right.
But they actually also are transferable now if you end up getting called to any other ministry, to the foreign mission field, to plant a church,
Right.
to another church, you move out of state. I mean, the things that we've done now are impactful.
Ooh, which makes sense. If you think about good leaders, at least let's just talk about our church. We have many men and women that are gifted, characters there, and have the competencies. And however the Spirit leads, we tend to bounce them around from team to team because they have the character and the competencies to move from team to team and still be successful and effective. This would be that's an example of that.
Absolutely an example.
Yeah.
If I get someone that has learned those core fundamental skills of a leader and they're really good at it, what happens is they're probably going to be pretty darn good at it in all these different areas.
Right.
And in fact, as they've gained sort of my trust of knowing that the competencies are high,
And
it's
you can-
very easy
Yeah.
for me to go, hey man.
Is that why you asked me to do so much?
Oh, see, now you know why you're on a podcast all of a sudden.
Oh, that's
But it
good.
makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
makes perfect sense.
I see the skills, I see their effectiveness, I've seen them displayed, and I know that leadership skills are largely transferable.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now, I think this is good, and I love that we're having this dialogue because I'm gonna speak for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming as I speak for myself, this will probably resonate with some other folk. Sometimes, without knowing that, I don't want to be moved around.
Right.
But hearing that, I don't feel this discontent with being moved around because it's what I'm hearing is, no, I can trust you in light of what God has done through you and your character and the development of these competencies that, hey man, I kind of need you over here. You might be better suited over here, or you can be more effective here, at least for a short term. And so as maybe people are being moved around within the church and leadership, maybe not take it personal like, oh, they're moving me from my spot, but rather, hey, we see some competencies that can be used and well served in another area.
Right.
Okay.
Well, if you think about this, go back to our Army analogy.
Right.
Right?
Oh,
I've
yeah.
got a major that in the Army, I've got a major that consistently gets things done. I mean, I'm watching them grow leaders. I'm watching them effectively do the things I've given them. And now I got a trouble spot over here.
Right.
Who am I going to?
Right. The dude I trust. Yeah. Or the lady I trust. My bad.
But the person that has displayed those leadership skills, now
Right.
we're going to talk about character in a minute, but that has displayed that effectiveness. I'm going to go, man, if I've got to put somebody in, let me put somebody
Yep.
that I have experientially seen
Yeah.
achieve these things.
Hey. Okay. Now talk to us about character.
Character's a little different, right? Whereas skills also change, right? Going up
Okay.
the ladder. So communication is different if I'm in charge of 10 people
Right.
than it is if I'm in charge of 100 than it is if I'm in charge of 1,000.
Right.
So even though we still call that communication, boy, the skill changes. Not only does the weight of the skill change, but the skill changes.
Yep.
Right? Character's a little different though. First and foremost, when we talk about character, so consistency is a great one to use as a
right.
or steadfastness, right?
Yeah,
I need
good
someone
one.
that is steadfast. I don't want a leader that's wishy-washy.
Right.
I don't know of a good leader that is wishy-washy.
Right. Makes sense.
I mean, I'm thinking in my own life of leaders, and I'm going, do I know a leader that's so inconsistent that they're doing this?
No.
No. In fact, one of the things that probably defines most of the good leaders in my life is like, whew, I mean, right?
Yep.
Just even, maybe not even keel, but I mean, they're going to put their shoulder down.
Yep.
They're going to go to work.
Yep. Reliable, trustworthy, steadfast. Yeah.
These are characteristics of a leader. Now, here's what's interesting about taking something like a characteristic. A characteristic is highly transformational.
Okay.
So how do I get there? Typically, something in my life or in my ministry, in my walk with the Lord, in my pursuit of God has transformed me. And so now that has come out in my character, refined over a period of time.
Right.
But it's been transformational.
Right.
Even if I was born with an inkling toward that.
Right.
There is work in that has changed my character,
Right.
molded me. We talk about this all the time in ministry work or
Right.
a walk, a pursuit of Jesus.
Right, right.
That is different than characteristic. I mean, that is different than competencies.
competencies.
Right? Competencies are largely informational. I've got to learn them, and then I've got to go do them.
Right.
That's different.
Yeah.
Learning them and doing them. I mean, I don't even know what the skill is.
Yeah.
I got to learn the skill. I learned something how to do it. Like woodworking is a skill.
Right,
I got
right,
to learn
right.
how to do it. I got to try it a few times.
Yeah.
That's a skill. Characteristics not.
Yeah, characteristics, as I'm listening to you kind of compare and contrast, characteristics sounds like it's more from the heart.
Yes.
And skill, to use this, imagery, is more like with your hands. It's something you can learn to do with your hands. The heart, you can't mold and do it. It has to be done internally as you continue, for what we would say through discipleship, following in those
Now,
disciplines.
while it's an easy analogy to say they are two sides of the same coin, the foundation, the prerequisite, the non-negotiable is the characteristics. Okay?
Right.
Meaning, and hear me because this is really important, I could take someone who does not have competencies. They don't have the right skills. They're just not very good yet because they haven't learned. They don't have the information. They don't have the experience.
Right.
But they have the character. They have the character of a leader, consistent and steadfast and joyful and encouraging. I mean, they have the character of a leader.
Yeah.
I can work with that.
Right. Because you can build the competencies.
Yes.
You can't build the character. If they got all the skills and the qualities on the company side, but they don't have character, now you're dealing with a problem.
In fact, let me take it a step further. We talk about this when we talk about pursuing Jesus. You'll hear preachers talk about this. They'll say, maybe the reason that you haven't moved forward in the call that God has on your life is you're still working on your character. We hear that,
Yep.
right? I've heard that. I've heard that many times.
Yep.
What is he saying? He's saying, look, you may have the skills.
Right.
You may have the calling.
Right.
God will provide the resources.
Yep.
All those things are great, but your character, son.
Yep. Yeah. I have vivid memories of, I got people coming in my mind right now.
Your character, son, ain't gonna cut it.
No.
Not gonna do it. And if
Yeah.
the character's not there, it don't work.
Yeah.
And we get into all the whys. A lot of it has to do with trust. I mean, a lot of it has to do with trust,
Yeah.
how you build trust as a leader. But if your character's not there, it's never going to work. So, for instance, when we talk about non-negotiables, I don't have many non-negotiable competencies. So, like, if you don't have this competency, you just can't even can't work with it.
Okay.
I don't have any of that, right? We
Okay.
can teach that.
Right.
But character, I got some non-negotiables.
Yeah.
If
Like
your
you said,
character-
one is like integrity.
Integrity.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm not pouring a great deal of work into the competency side when the character's not there yet.
Because you're spending so much
spending
time on
the
that.
character.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
That makes
highlighting
sense.
the character. We're praying for that individual. We're hoping and asking for God to do work on that person's character.
Right.
But until the character's there, I'm going to have a tough time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the secular world, in the workplace, it's actually no different. I may not say God.
Right.
I may not credit the Holy Spirit.
Right.
But son, if your character ain't there,
Yeah. And we call this in the spiritual sector, to use that, we still call it maturity. But in the business sector, we call it maturity as well. It's that, is your character mature enough to handle this level of leadership or a promotion or some advancement or whatever?
right. So again, to contrast, character is the prerequisite, it's the foundation. Everything's built upon good character. If
Right.
you don't have it, it's not happening.
Right.
It is highly transformational in nature. So when we talk about teaching it or watching someone go through it, generally they're going through it in a very transformational way, like almost
Right.
life events. It's
Yeah.
Holy Spirit.
The
what's doing
metamorphosis.
that, the
You're seeing them
metamorphosis.
change from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Yeah.
The other side, competencies, which are skills, are more informational and experiential, meaning you have to do them. You
Okay.
have to know them and do them
Right.
over time, practice them and hone them
Right.
in order to get better at them. They can be taught much more easily.
Right.
Because look, in character, I think you'd agree, in character, it is not an informational problem.
Right.
I normally know what I should be doing and shouldn't be doing.
Right.
In fact, if people would just do the things that they already know they should be doing and shouldn't be doing, we could skip a lot of stuff. I could skip a lot of drama.
For real.
Bro, my sermons could be so much shorter.
Maybe not mine, but yeah, I get it.
Do this, don't do this, have a good Sunday,
Right,
y'all. I mean,
right,
like,
right.
no, that's transformational.
Yeah.
And the where the church goes wrong, in American culture particularly,
Okay.
is that we naturally as a church focus on the character side all the time.
Right, because it's what we call discipleship.
It is.
That's largely, if we think of discipleship, it is largely about building the character of the individual to
Yes.
look more like Jesus,
Yes.
less about competencies until we're ready to put them in a position of leadership.
Until we're ready to put them in a position of leadership, or just because we just don't have a system for it, we have no framework.
Right.
We don't teach it, and we make this assumption: if they have great character, they'll be a great leader. We do.
Right, because it's one half, it's one side of the coin, not the other, it's not both. Yeah.
So we stop short. We'll be hyper focused on character.
Right.
We'll have 10 different Bible studies.
Right.
We'll send them through hermeneutics and apologetics and everything else, but we've not taught them how to lead.
Right. That's good. Yep. How do you communicate to your team? How do you cast vision? How do you course correct? Yeah. Things like that. Yeah.
And so it sounds funny, but I mean, there's this joke around churches that, like, if you want to grow leaders, you're like, what are you doing to grow leaders? Or what are you doing to develop leaders? Like, oh, we're having a Bible study on apologetics.
Right. Right.
But how is that? What?
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. So then do this for us then. Tell us how we go through our leadership vetting process.
So we instituted this a while back because what we realized is before we could get to calling someone a leader, putting the title of leader around them, putting them in charge of 10 people, 5 people, anybody,
Right.
we had better make sure the character meets a certain minimum requirement. And so now, to even be considered as a leader of any team anywhere, we have a bunch of prerequisites. We don't tell you
Right.
that they're prerequisites. We don't even tell you about the opportunity.
Right.
We actually, when we think you might be getting there, we take your name and we go sort of secretly and we start looking at character. We have a whole little list of characters.
Right,
What are we trying to
right.
do? Hey, make sure that
Right.
the character meets the minimum requirement so we can start pouring in the leadership development.
Right.
Because tell you what, you get tricked by the competencies and you see great skills, charismatic or vision, caster, has influence, all those
Yeah.
things, but doesn't have the character, and you stick that person in leadership.
Oh man, train wreck coming. And then it's harder even to remove them because they don't have the character enough to submit if you say, hey, I need you to step down for a little while. Yeah, been there.
Right.
Now, you and I talked in my office earlier, and I loved how you gave this illustration of the circles that overlap with one another. I think you called them concentric
circles.
Yeah, so explain that to the viewers.
Yeah, so if you think of 3 overlapping circles, and each circle is its own sort of concept, and it's where they touch or overlap that really you get what you're looking for, right?
Okay.
And so, and this is all about how we develop the competencies, how we develop leaders. And so one of those is experience. So, and everybody knows this if they've had to go through something before. Sometimes you got to go through the school of hard knocks.
Yep.
Right? I used to say you got to take your lumps. My dad
Yep.
used to say this all the time. That boy got to take his lumps.
Yep.
You got to go do it. Sometimes you'll do it well. Sometimes you fail, but you're learning in the process of doing it.
Right.
Experience.
Yep.
There's no substitute for it.
Absolutely.
There's one. And then on another side, it's just the knowledge, the information,
Right.
learning. I mean, there are leadership concepts that you're going to find most of your volunteers have never even heard of. You've just never even, as a great example, when we talk about a skill of caring for others, whether
Yep.
that's a skill of a leader,
Yep.
when we talk about the 5 love languages, now we do this in counseling too.
Right.
I can't tell you the number of people that I go, hey, have you heard of the 5 love languages? They go, no,
Nope.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
go, really? And so you start to go, how do you know how they best receive appreciation?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right? And so it is purely informational.
Yep.
It is sort of this revelatory moment for someone who goes, oh.
Yeah, this person under me's love language is this, and I've been trying to honor them this way and wondering why it's been missing because I'm not speaking to them in their love language. Yeah.
So it starts with information, knowledge,
Yeah.
right? And then they're going to take that, and hopefully they're going to go try to experience it. They're going to try to work on it and see how
Right.
it works in the real world. Those
Right.
are 2 circles that cross, and that 3rd circle that comes across is mentoring or coaching.
Okay.
So the teacher
Yep.
who's giving feedback, who's correcting, who's nudging both on character and competency,
Right, right.
sides, is the one that's kind of just got an eye on or the smell test going for that leader. So
Yeah.
if those 3 cross,
Yep.
and I get somebody who has the character, clearly.
Right. This is assuming that we're talking about they have the character. Yep.
They are trying to lead in that area, so there's some experience going on. We're giving them the knowledge and the skills. We're
So
trying
they
to
can
work
go
on
and
those,
continue to try,
And then
yep.
they got a person in their life, whether
Yep.
it's an overseer in the volunteer level, a pastor, a mentor.
Right.
Those 3 things come together. That's where it happens.
That's
right?
good.
And so what we want to do is we're trying to make sure everybody that we're putting into leadership has that overseer mentor.
That's good.
Who has eyes on the leadership.
Yep.
I'm looking at the competencies and the character.
Yeah.
Both. And I'm giving you the information, right? So we're doing podcasts and development, and
Right.
leadership development. Like
Right.
It's not the prayer of, oh God, please send me some leaders.
Right. He's already sent us to leaders, and it's okay, Lord, open my eyes, let me see them, and then let me train them and develop them.
Grass grows best where you water it.
Right. That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's water it. Let's
Right.
get that information out, and let's give them some rope,
Yes.
Go lead.
That's the experience. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Some of the more powerful moments in my leadership development, some of the most powerful moments in the people that I'm leading is when they screw up really bad.
And you turn around and say, now tell me.
And I get to, with some grace, go, it's okay.
Yep.
Here's what you learn out of
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Here's your takeaways. Yep. Here's
And
how
I'll
you
tell
can
you
grow.
what, they're learning.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
It's
trust
like,
me.
woo!
Hey, you burn your hand enough times, you realize fire is hot. I probably shouldn't stick it there, you know. So.
And if you can do it in such a way without condemnation at the end.
Right.
Where
Oh,
I'm
then they're
going,
empowered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm allowed to mess up.
Yeah.
Yep. You're
Yeah.
allowed to mess up. Like, that's actually part of this process.
Yes.
We need you to risk messing up. In fact, they went and did this survey because we always think that babies and young kids learn languages faster than adults, which is true. They actually do learn languages faster than adults. But they don't actually learn and retain faster. Adults learn, retain, and understand faster than kids do.
Because of the complexity of where we are.
Because of
Yeah.
the brains. So the reason kids actually get languages faster, even though our brains are working better and faster and more complex, is that they're not afraid to mess up.
Yep. Trial and error. Well, that's all they know. Yeah. The primitive part. Yeah.
And we stop.
Yeah, because we don't like to make mistakes. We don't like to fail. We don't like to. A TED Talk 2016. It's one of the quotes I actually have on my computer. It says, "Make it safe to fail."
Yes.
Make it
Yes.
safe to fail. Why? Because that's where your leaders are going to grow. In this case, we're talking about projects. That's where you see the most growth out of your project is making it safe to fail. That's good.
So 3 other things to remember as we're training this. The primary thing I want you to always get out of this is not just that the idea of competency and character, right?
Right.
Which you need to understand and pay attention to. Understand that they're developed in different ways, but they're both incredibly important. But it's the idea that this process of developing it has to be intentional.
Right.
You got to be working at it.
Yep.
It's not a linear process. It's progressive. It builds on the last lessons.
Yeah.
But it's not linear. It doesn't go in
Right.
a straight line. It's going to zoom all over the place.
Which we should know. Nothing in our spiritual life is linear.
Right,
you know.
right.
So.
A couple other little tips. A great competency at a lower level does not necessarily mean you'll be really good at that same thing at a higher level.
That's good.
So again, I can be really good at communicating in groups of 10,
Smaller group.
and then you put me on a stage with 1,000 people, and
Yeah.
I'm lost.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna use it. I think this is great, and I'm sure he'll watch and he'll chuckle at this. Mark is adamant. Do not make me the backup preacher. That's not my level of competency.
Right.
But you put Mark in a room.
Phenomenal.
Oh, he can kill it. You put Russ on the stage. Yeah, exactly. That would be one of those, like, Mark knows his competency, he knows the lid there. I'm cool. This is where I fit. This is how I can be best served and effective, is in this smaller number. Right. The larger stage, nope, not where I'm at. That's good. Yeah.
Yep. And the great thing about competency side is you don't have to have a 10 out of 10 at every competency.
Right.
You do not, right? Now, you need to be very good at the character side. If you have a character deficiency, you're going to have a problem. You can have a competency deficiency. As long as you know that you're not very good at that skill, you can actually get team members and other people to come in and sub in areas where your competency is not good.
Yep.
And you can work on it and know you've got to develop and bring team members in. You can't do that with character.
Right.
If you don't have integrity, no amount of
Yeah.
well, he's got integrity, so we're okay. That doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
right?
competencies are more complementary of one another. Yeah.
Yes, they are.
That's good. Okay.
The last thing is this: we're going to pour into people. Okay, now that's what we're doing. We're investing. We're intentionally discipling. We're intentionally doing development in their leadership skills and character. But not everybody that you're pouring into was meant to stay here.
Right.
In fact, they're probably not meant to stay. I mean, there are going to be people that you're pouring into because God has a plan to send them somewhere else.
Right.
That's okay. You're not meant to hold on to them. In fact, if you're doing a good job developing leaders, you're going to keep developing leaders faster than you have places for them to go.
Right.
And you need to send them out.
Right.
You never want to tight fist around the leader you're developing so that God can't take that person and go do something with
Right.
them. We're developing with an open hand, understanding that we're making a kingdom impact, whether that person stays in our organization or we're sending them out to another organization.
Right, which is the key there. We're making a kingdom impact. If I realize that I'm doing this for the kingdom and not for myself, or purely in this sense for my church, then I am a little bit more okay with being open-handed and saying I can pour into you knowing that God's going to take and use you how he sees fit. Lord willing, it's here. But then if not, he calls you somewhere else, I helped you to go along and carry out
And
whatever
even
God's plan
in a secular
is.
organization, I'm pouring into that individual because I need them to develop. And even if, in order to have the space, they've got to go to another organization. If I do well with them, if I invest in them, if I create that environment, and I end well with them, I send them off well.
Yeah.
A lot of times they come back.
Yep.
Later and fill a different opportunity in my organization because I did well with them.
Yeah.
I didn't hold them back behind like a glass ceiling because I didn't want to lose them.
Yeah.
Like when they go, they're gone.
Yeah, and it's a good feeling too of knowing I've helped that person develop in their leadership, and then now I get to see wherever they may be, whether in my organization, in my church, or somewhere else. You know, that's a good feeling. Yeah, I mean, we see that with Paul. He did that with Timothy and Titus and so on. So,
Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely, dude.
Well, that's leadership competency and character, and I think, big takeaways, two sides of the same coin.
Right.
One is a transformational change, which
That's
is
the character. Yeah.
And one is more informational and experiential, and that is your competencies. The prerequisite is always character.
Right.
And the skill side, the competency side, you can have gaps. That's fine. We can take guys with almost no skill. We can teach them those skills.
Right.
And we want to, and then you got to be intentional about teaching the leadership skills. It's why we have a leadership pipeline.
Right.
That's why we're working on it. It's not linear. It's messy. It's organic.
Right.
But we're teaching some skills that we believe are transferable across all ministries and all churches that are preaching the Bible.
Right. Amen. That sounds good.
All right, guys.
All right.
See you next time.
See you.